The morning fog rolled off San Francisco Bay as Jake Morrison jogged through the quiet streets of Pacific Heights with his German Shepherd Rex at his side. At 35, Jake had found a comfortable rhythm in the wealthy neighborhood where he worked as a private security consultant. The job allowed him flexible hours to care for his 8-year-old daughter Emma, who stayed with him every other week per the custody arrangement with his ex-wife. Rex suddenly stopped dead in his tracks, his ears perking up and his body going rigid with attention. The dog's behavior was unusual, alert in a way that Jake had learned to trust during their 3 years together. Rex had been a military working dog before an injury ended his service career, and his instincts had proven invaluable in Jake's security work. "What is it, boy?" Jake whispered, following Rex's intense gaze toward the elegant Victorian mansion at the end of the block. The house belonged to Victoria Sterling, the 42-year-old CEO of Sterling Dynamics, one of the city's most successful tech companies. Jake had been providing discreet security services for several residents in the neighborhood for the past 2 years, but Ms. Sterling had never been a client. She was known for being intensely private, rarely seen in public except at carefully staged corporate events. Rex began to whine low in his throat, a sound Jake had never heard from the normally calm and disciplined animal. The dog's attention was focused on a sleek black Mercedes sedan parked in Sterling's driveway, its engine running despite the early morning hour. Jake checked his watch. 6:15 in the morning was an unusual time for anyone to be leaving for work, especially on a Saturday. Most of the neighborhood's residents didn't stir until well past 8 on weekends, when they emerged for leisurely brunches and shopping excursions. As they approached the Sterling property, Rex's agitation increased dramatically. The dog began to pace in tight circles, his breathing becoming rapid and his eyes never leaving the Mercedes. Jake had seen this behavior once before in Afghanistan, when Rex had detected explosives hidden in a vehicle outside their forward operating base. "Easy, Rex," Jake murmured, keeping his voice calm while his own adrenaline began to spike. Whatever was triggering the dog's response was serious enough to override years of training and discipline. The front door of the Sterling mansion opened, and Victoria Sterling emerged, moving with the brisk efficiency that had made her a legend in Silicon Valley. Even at this early hour, she was impeccably dressed in a tailored business suit, her blonde hair pulled back in a severe bun that emphasized the sharp angles of her face. She carried a large Louis Vuitton travel bag and what appeared to be a laptop case. Jake had seen her photograph in business magazines, but in person, Victoria Sterling projected an aura of controlled intensity that was almost magnetic. She moved like someone accustomed to being watched, every gesture calculated and purposeful. Rex's whining escalated to barely contained barking as Victoria approached her car. The dog was now straining against his leash, desperate to investigate the vehicle that had captured his attention. Jake had to use all his strength to keep the 90-pound German Shepherd from breaking free. Victoria paused at her car door, noticing the commotion across the street. Her pale blue eyes met Jake's for a moment, and he saw something flicker across her face. Recognition, perhaps, or calculation. She was clearly assessing whether he posed a threat to whatever plans she had for her early morning departure. "Problem with your dog?" she called out, her voice carrying the crisp authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed without question. "Sorry," Jake replied, struggling to control Rex's increasingly frantic behavior. "He's usually very well behaved. Something about your car seems to be bothering him." Victoria's expression hardened almost imperceptibly. "Perhaps you should take him home before he disturbs the entire neighborhood." There was something in her tone that set off alarms in Jake's mind. The suggestion wasn't friendly advice, it was a veiled threat. Victoria Sterling wanted him gone, and she wanted him gone immediately. Rex suddenly lunged forward with such force that Jake's grip on the leash slipped. The dog raced across the street toward the Mercedes, ignoring Jake's sharp commands to return. Victoria stepped back quickly as Rex began circling her car, his nose pressed close to the trunk area, his agitation reaching a fever pitch. "Get your animal away from my vehicle," Victoria demanded, her composure cracking slightly. Immediately. Jake jogged across the street, genuinely apologetic about his dog's behavior, but increasingly curious about what was causing it. "Rex, heel," he commanded firmly. The dog reluctantly backed away from the car but continued to pace and whine, his attention locked on the trunk. "I'm sorry, miss." "Sterling," Jake said, grabbing Rex's collar. "This is completely unlike him. He's a former military working dog, very well trained. For him to act like this, there must be something in your car that's triggering his alert response." Victoria's face went pale beneath her carefully applied makeup. Alert response? Rex was trained to detect explosives and drugs in Afghanistan. When he behaves like this, it usually means he's found something that shouldn't be there. The silence that followed was heavy with tension. Victoria's hand moved involuntarily toward her car keys, and Jake noticed her fingers were trembling slightly. Whatever was in that trunk, she was desperate to get it away from here before anyone else noticed Rex's behavior. "I think there's been a misunderstanding," Victoria said, forcing her voice back to its usual controlled tone. "I'm running late for a business meeting. If you could just remove your dog from my property." But Rex had other plans. The German Shepherd broke free from Jake's grip again, this time jumping up and placing his front paws on the trunk of the Mercedes. His barking became sharp and insistent, the same alert bark Jake had heard him use when detecting hidden weapons caches overseas. "Rex, down!" Jake commanded, but the dog ignored him completely. This level of disobedience was unprecedented in their relationship, which told Jake everything he needed to know about the seriousness of whatever Rex had detected. Victoria's mask of corporate composure finally slipped completely. "Get that animal away from my car right now, or I'm calling the police." "Maybe we should call the police," Jake said quietly, his eyes never leaving her face. "If Rex is alerting on your vehicle, there might be something dangerous inside that they need to know about." The color drained from Victoria's face so quickly that Jake thought she might faint. Her carefully controlled breathing became shallow and rapid, and she clutched her car keys so tightly that her knuckles went white. "There's nothing in my car that concerns you or anyone else," she said. But her voice lacked conviction. "This is private property, and I'm asking you to leave." Rex continued his frantic investigation of the trunk area, his behavior becoming more agitated by the moment. Jake had seen enough combat situations to recognize when something was seriously wrong, and every instinct he'd developed during his military service was screaming that Victoria Sterling was hiding something significant. "Miss Sterling," Jake said carefully, "I've worked in security for a long time. My dog's behavior is telling me that there's something in your trunk that could be dangerous. For everyone's safety, maybe we should take a look." "Absolutely not," Victoria snapped, her composure cracking further. "You have no right to search my vehicle. You're trespassing on my property, and I want you gone immediately." Jake pulled out his phone, keeping his movements slow and deliberate. "I'm going to call the San Francisco Police Department. They have K-9 units that can verify whether Rex's alert is accurate. If there's nothing to worry about, we can all go about our day." "Don't you dare," Victoria said, her voice rising to a pitch that bordered on panic. "I'll sue you for harassment. I'll have your security license revoked. I'll destroy your business." The threats confirmed Jake's suspicions that Victoria Sterling was hiding something serious. Innocent people didn't react to police involvement with panic and legal intimidation. They welcomed the opportunity to clear up misunderstandings. Rex's barking intensified, and several neighbors began emerging from their houses to investigate the commotion. Mrs. Chen from the house next door appeared on her front porch in a bathrobe, her elderly face creased with concern. The Johnsons from across the street opened their front door, clearly disturbed by the unusual noise in their typically quiet neighborhood. Victoria noticed the growing audience and seemed to realize that her window for discreetly leaving the area was rapidly closing. She moved toward the driver's side of her Mercedes with obvious desperation. But Rex positioned himself between her and the car door, his protective instincts fully engaged. "Miss "Sterling," Jake said, his voice taking on the calm authority he'd used to diffuse tense situations in the military, "I think it would be better for everyone if we just waited for the police to arrive. They can sort this out professionally." "You don't understand," Victoria said, her voice breaking slightly. "I can't. I have to leave now." The admission that she needed to leave immediately only strengthened Jake's conviction that something illegal was happening. Combined with Rex's unprecedented behavior and Victoria's obvious panic, the situation had all the hallmarks of a serious crime in progress. Jake dialed 911 while keeping his eyes on Victoria, who had begun pacing beside her car like a caged animal. Rex maintained his position near the trunk, his alert posture indicating that whatever had triggered his response was still present. 911, what's your emergency? The dispatcher's voice was calm and professional. "This is Jake Morrison. I'm at 1247 Broadway Street in Pacific Heights. I have a trained military detection dog that's alerting on a vehicle. The owner is acting suspiciously and refusing to allow inspection. I think you need to send a unit out here." Victoria's eyes widened with what appeared to be genuine terror as she heard Jake's conversation with the police. She looked around frantically, as if searching for an escape route, but the growing crowd of neighbors and Rex's continued vigilance had effectively trapped her on her own property. "Sir, are you or anyone else in immediate danger?" the dispatcher asked. Jake looked at Victoria, who was now leaning against her car for support, her face pale and her breathing labored. She looked more like someone having a panic attack than someone preparing to commit violence, but Jake knew that appearances could be deceiving. "I don't think so," Jake replied, "but my dog's behavior suggests there might be something dangerous in the vehicle. The owner is extremely agitated and trying to leave before anyone can investigate. Units are on the way. Please stay on the line and maintain a safe distance from the vehicle until officers arrive." Victoria must have heard the dispatcher's instructions because she suddenly straightened up with renewed determination. "This is ridiculous," she announced loudly enough for the gathered neighbors to hear. "I'm being harassed by this man and his dog on my own property. I have every right to leave." She moved toward her car door again, but Rex immediately stepped forward, his body language shifting from alert to actively protective. The dog's training had taught him to prevent suspects from fleeing crime scenes, and his instincts were clearly telling him that Victoria Sterling was a suspect. "Ma'am, I really think it would be better if you waited for the police," Jake said. "Running away will only make things worse." "I'm not running away," Victoria protested, but her voice lacked conviction. "I have a legitimate business meeting to attend." "On Saturday morning at 6:30? Jake asked. "What kind of business meeting starts this early on a weekend?" Victoria's inability to provide a convincing answer to this simple question spoke volumes. Jake had investigated enough suspicious activities during his military and security career to recognize the telltale signs of deception under pressure. The sound of approaching sirens filled the morning air, and Victoria's remaining composure finally collapsed completely. She sank against her car, her carefully maintained facade crumbling to reveal the terrified woman underneath. "You don't understand," she whispered, tears beginning to stream down her face. "I never meant for any of this to happen. It just got out of control." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. Victoria Sterling's words sounded like the beginning of a confession, and Rex's continued agitation suggested that whatever was in that trunk was serious enough to warrant federal involvement. As the first police cars rounded the corner, their red and blue lights cutting through the morning fog, Jake realized that his routine weekend jog with Rex had uncovered something far more significant than a simple neighborhood disturbance. The fear in Victoria Sterling's eyes and the desperation in her voice suggested that whatever secrets were hidden in the trunk of her Mercedes would shock everyone involved. Two patrol officers emerged from the lead vehicle, their hands resting casually on their duty belts as they assessed the scene. Officer Martinez, a veteran with graying temples, approached Jake while his younger partner, Officer Thompson, positioned himself near Victoria and her vehicle. "Sir, you're the one who called about a suspicious vehicle. Martinez asked, his tone professional but cautious. That's right, Jake replied, maintaining his grip on Rex's leash as the dog continued to alert on the Mercedes trunk. I'm Jake Morrison, private security consultant. This is Rex, former military working dog. He's trained in explosive and narcotics detection, and he's been alerting on this vehicle for the past 15 minutes. Officer Martinez's demeanor shifted slightly as he processed this information. Military working dogs had credibility that civilian pets didn't, and their alert behaviors were taken seriously by law enforcement. And you are? Martinez addressed Victoria, who was still leaning against her car for support. Victoria Sterling. This is my property, my vehicle, and I was simply trying to leave for a business appointment when this man and his dog began harassing me. Ma'am, it's 6:30 on Saturday morning, Officer Thompson observed. That's an unusual time for business meetings. Victoria's jaw tightened. I run a major technology company. Business doesn't follow conventional schedules. Rex's barking intensified as more people gathered, his training telling him that the situation was escalating and the target of his alert was still present. Jake noticed sweat beginning to bead on Victoria's forehead despite the cool morning air. Officer Martinez, Jake said, I served 2 tours in Afghanistan with K9 units. Rex's behavior indicates he's detected something significant. His alert is consistent with either explosives or large quantities of narcotics. That's ridiculous, Victoria protested, but her voice cracked slightly. I'm a respected businesswoman, not some common criminal. I need to explain something, Victoria finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. But not here. Not with all these people watching. More neighbors had emerged from their houses, drawn by the police presence and the unusual commotion. Mrs. Chen had been joined by her husband, and several other residents stood on their porches, cell phones recording the scene. We can move this away from the crowd, Martinez suggested. But first, I need you to step away from the vehicle and keep your hands visible. Victoria complied reluctantly, moving several steps away from the Mercedes. Rex immediately moved closer to the trunk, his alert behavior becoming even more pronounced. Officer, Jake said quietly, his reaction is getting stronger. Whatever's in there, it's significant. Martinez called for backup and requested a K9 unit for verification. Within minutes, 2 additional patrol cars arrived, followed by a police K9 unit with a German Shepherd named Max. Officer Rodriguez emerged from the K9 vehicle and approached the scene with Max, who immediately began showing interest in the Mercedes. Within seconds, Max was exhibiting the same alert behavior as Rex, confirming that both dogs were detecting the same substance. 2 independent dogs are alerting on your vehicle, ma'am, Martinez informed Victoria. That gives us probable cause to search. Victoria's composure finally shattered completely. She sank to her knees on the manicured lawn, her hands covering her face as sobs racked her body. It wasn't supposed to happen like this, she cried. I never wanted anyone to get hurt. I just needed the money to save my company. The officers exchanged concerned glances. Victoria's words suggested they were dealing with something far more serious than simple drug possession. Ma'am, before we go any further, I need to read you your rights, Martinez said, pulling out his handcuffs. Wait, Victoria said, looking up through her tears. If I cooperate, if I tell you everything, can you protect my daughter? She doesn't know anything about this. She's only 16 and she's at boarding school in Switzerland. Please don't let this destroy her life. Jake felt a chill as he realized that Victoria Sterling wasn't just a criminal. She was a mother. And whatever was in that trunk was serious enough that she feared for her child's safety. Officer Rodriguez approached the Mercedes with bolt cutters, preparing to open the trunk. Rex and Max both intensified their alerts as he reached for the latch. Everyone step back, Rodriguez commanded. We don't know what we're dealing with here. Officer Martinez exchanged glances with his partner. Ma'am, would you mind if we take a look in your vehicle? It would help clear this up quickly. I absolutely mind, Victoria said, her voice rising. You have no warrant, no probable cause. This is harassment based on the random behavior of an animal. Actually, Officer Thompson said, a trained detection dog's alert can constitute probable cause for a search, especially a military working dog with documented training records. Victoria's face went ashen. I want to call my lawyer. That's your right, Martinez agreed. But ma'am, I have to ask, is there anything in your vehicle that you want to tell us about before we proceed? The silence stretched for nearly a minute as Victoria struggled with her response. Jake could see the calculation in her eyes, weighing her options as Rex continued his relentless alerting behavior. As the trunk lid rose, Jake heard several of the officers gasp simultaneously. Even from his position 20 feet away, he could see that the trunk contained multiple large duffel bags and what appeared to be sophisticated electronic equipment. Jesus Christ, Officer Thompson muttered. Martinez, you need to call the FBI immediately. Victoria's shoulders shook as she realized her secret was finally exposed. They're going to kill me, she whispered. And probably my daughter too. Special Agent Sarah Chen arrived at the scene 43 minutes after Officer Martinez's call to the FBI field office. The blonde agent emerged from her black SUV with the focused intensity of someone who had dealt with high-stakes criminal investigations for over a decade. She surveyed the crowd of neighbors, the multiple police vehicles, and the 2 German shepherds still alerting on Victoria Sterling's Mercedes. Who's the primary witness? Agent Chen asked Officer Martinez as she flashed her credentials. Jake Morrison, the gentleman with the detection dog, Martinez replied, gesturing toward Jake, who was standing near the perimeter tape that had been established around the vehicle. Former military, works private security. His dog initiated the alert. Agent Chen approached Jake with the no-nonsense demeanor of a federal investigator. Mr. Morrison, I'm Special Agent Chen, FBI Financial Crimes Division. I understand your dog detected something in Miss Sterling's vehicle? That's correct, Jake replied, maintaining his grip on Rex's leash. Rex is former military, trained in explosive and narcotics detection. He's never had a false alert in the 3 years I've worked with him. Agent Chen studied Rex, who was still showing signs of agitation despite being moved away from the Mercedes. What's his alert behavior typically indicate? In Afghanistan, it meant explosives or large quantities of drugs. But his behavior today is different, more intense, like he's detecting something he's never encountered before. Agent Chen's expression grew more serious. She turned toward Victoria Sterling, who was sitting in the back of a patrol car, with her hands cuffed behind her back. Even through the car window, Victoria's fear was palpable. What did she say when you opened the trunk? Agent Chen asked Officer Rodriguez. She started talking about needing money to save her company, and she mentioned being afraid someone would kill her and her daughter. The contents appear to be multiple duffel bags and electronic equipment, but we haven't done a detailed examination yet. Agent Chen nodded, processing this information. Has anyone else been in contact with the vehicle since your arrival? No, ma'am. We secured the scene immediately and waited for federal assistance as requested. Jake watched as Agent Chen pulled on latex gloves and approached the Mercedes. She moved with the careful precision of someone who understood that evidence preservation could make or break a case. Mr. Morrison, would you mind bringing your dog closer? Agent Chen requested. I want to see his exact reaction pattern. Jake guided Rex back toward the Mercedes, and the dog immediately resumed his intense, alerting behavior. But this time, Agent Chen was watching carefully, noting which areas of the vehicle triggered the strongest response. He's focusing primarily on the trunk area, she observed. But there's secondary interest in the rear passenger compartment. That suggests multiple sources. Agent Chen opened the trunk fully and began photographing the contents before examination. The duffel bags were expensive leather, the kind used for luxury travel. The electronic equipment appeared to be some type of communication devices, though Jake couldn't identify the specific technology from his position. Miss Sterling, Agent Chen called toward the patrol car. I need to ask you some questions about what we found here. Victoria was escorted from the patrol car, her composure somewhat restored, but her fear still evident. She looked at the open trunk of her Mercedes as if seeing it for the first time. Before we continue, Agent Chen said. "I want to make sure you understand your rights. You've been read your Miranda rights by the local officers?" "Yes," Victoria replied quietly. "Do you want to continue speaking without an attorney present?" Victoria hesitated, glancing around at the crowd of neighbors and investigators. "If I cooperate, if I tell you everything, what kind of protection can you offer my daughter?" Agent Chen's expression softened slightly. "That depends on what we're dealing with here. But if you're genuinely cooperating and your daughter is truly innocent, we can discuss witness protection options." Victoria took a shaky breath. "My name is Victoria Sterling, and I'm the CEO of Sterling Dynamics. For the past 18 months, I've been embezzling money from my company and selling proprietary technology to foreign buyers." The admission hit the assembled officers like a physical blow. Jake found himself staring at this woman, who had seemed so composed and powerful just hours earlier, now confessing to what sounded like major corporate espionage. "The money in those bags," Victoria continued, her voice growing stronger as she unburdened herself, "is payment for software that can infiltrate banking systems. The buyers are Russian nationals who I believe work for organized crime syndicates." Agent Chen's posture stiffened. "How much money are we talking about?" $2.7 million in cash. The final payment for source code that could compromise security at major financial institutions. Jake felt his blood run cold. This wasn't just corporate crime, it was potential economic terrorism. The technology Victoria had sold could affect millions of innocent people's financial security. "Why?" Agent Chen asked. "Sterling Dynamics is a successful company. Why risk everything for money you apparently didn't need?" Victoria's composure cracked again. "Because the company isn't successful. We've been hemorrhaging money for 2 years, covering massive losses with creative accounting. I was desperate to save the jobs of 800 employees and avoid bankruptcy." "So you decided to sell out your country instead?" Agent Chen's voice carried undisguised disgust. "I never thought of it that way," Victoria protested. "I just needed capital to keep the company afloat. But once I started taking their money, they made it clear that refusing wasn't an option." Agent Chen opened one of the duffel bags, revealing neat stacks of $100 bills. "And the electronic equipment? Communication devices, encrypted phones and relay equipment that they insisted I use for all our transactions. They said it was for security, but I think they were monitoring everything I did." Jake realized that Victoria Sterling had gotten involved with people far more dangerous than she'd initially understood. What started as corporate desperation had evolved into a situation that threatened national security. "Miss Sterling," Agent Chen said, "I need you to understand the gravity of what you're telling me. You've admitted to espionage, money laundering, and providing material support to foreign criminal organizations. These are federal crimes that carry life sentences." Victoria nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I know, but I can't live with what I've done anymore. And I'm terrified that they're going to kill me for getting caught." "Who specifically are they?" Agent Chen pressed. "I only know 3 names. Dmitry Volkov, who I believe is the financial coordinator, Yuri Petrov, who handles the technical aspects, and someone they call the director, who I've never met but who apparently oversees all their American operations." Agent Chen was taking detailed notes, and Jake could see her mind working through the implications of what Victoria was revealing. This case had evolved from a simple drug bust to an international espionage investigation. "When was your last contact with these people?" Agent Chen asked. "Yesterday. Dmitry called to confirm this morning's meeting. I was supposed to deliver the money and receive new instructions for the next phase of their operation." "What's the next phase?" Victoria's voice dropped to a whisper. "They want me to recruit other tech executives. They're planning to compromise multiple companies, not just Sterling Dynamics." The scope of the conspiracy was staggering. Jake found himself thinking about Emma, his 8-year-old daughter, and the world these criminals were trying to create for her generation. Agent Chen stepped away from Victoria and made a phone call, speaking in low, urgent tones. Jake caught fragments of the conversation, international task force, immediate threat, and full surveillance package. When Agent Chen returned, her expression was grim. "Miss Sterling, we're going to need your complete cooperation. Names, dates, locations, communication methods, everything you know about this organization." "What about my daughter?" Victoria asked desperately. "She'll be protected. But you need to understand that your cooperation may require you to continue your relationship with these people under FBI supervision." Victoria's face went white. "You want me to keep working with them?" "We want to catch them," Agent Chen said firmly. "And right now, you're our best chance to infiltrate their operation." Jake watched as Victoria struggled with this request. She was being asked to continue the very activities that had terrified her enough to confess, but now under federal oversight. "If I refuse?" Victoria asked. "Then we arrest you now, for everything you've already admitted to, and these people disappear to plan their next attack on American financial infrastructure." The choice was brutal but clear. Victoria could help catch the people who had manipulated her into treason, or she could protect herself while they continued threatening national security. "I'll do it," Victoria said finally, "but I need guarantees about my daughter's safety." Agent Chen nodded. "We'll have a protection detail on her within 6 hours. But Miss Sterling, if you deviate from our operational plan even slightly, the deal is off." As federal agents began processing the scene and preparing to transport Victoria for detailed debriefing, Jake found himself reflecting on how quickly a routine morning jog had escalated into an international security crisis. Rex, finally calm now that the threatening materials had been secured, sat beside Jake with the satisfied air of a job well done. The dog's instincts had uncovered a threat that could have affected millions of Americans. Agent Chen approached Jake as the investigation began winding down. "Mr. Morrison, we're going to need detailed statements from you about your dog's behavior and training. Rex's alert may be crucial evidence in prosecuting this case." "Of course," Jake replied. "But can I ask what happens next? To Victoria, I mean." Agent Chen glanced toward the patrol car where Victoria was being held. "If she cooperates fully and helps us dismantle this network, she might avoid life in prison. But she'll never be a free woman again. Not really. The kind of people she's been dealing with don't forgive betrayal." Jake understood the implicit message. Victoria Sterling had made choices that would define the rest of her life, and possibly the rest of her daughter's life as well. "One more thing," Agent Chen added. "This investigation is going to be classified at the highest levels. What happened here this morning officially never occurred." As Jake walked home with Rex, the familiar streets of Pacific Heights looked different somehow. He'd always known that his neighborhood housed powerful and wealthy people, but he'd never imagined that international espionage was being conducted behind the elegant facades of Victorian mansions. Emma would be arriving for her weekend visit that afternoon, and Jake found himself grateful that his daughter lived in a world where the biggest concerns were homework and playground friendships, not the kind of adult betrayals that could reshape international relations. Rex trotted beside him with his usual calm demeanor, showing no sign of the intensity he'd displayed just hours earlier. To the dog, they'd simply encountered a threat, identified it, and neutralized it. But Jake knew that the reverberations from this morning's discovery would continue for months, possibly years. As they turned onto their own street, Jake's phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. "Thank you for not walking away. The world is safer because you and Rex were paying attention today. Agent Chen." Jake smiled slightly, scratching Rex behind the ears. "Good boy," he murmured. "You did good today." But even as he said the words, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of something much larger and more dangerous than anyone had yet realized. 3 days later, Jake's intuition proved correct when Agent Chen called him with an urgent request to meet at a secure location. The FBI field office downtown was a fortress of glass and steel, designed to project both transparency and impenetrability. Jake found himself in a conference room on the 15th floor, facing Agent Chen and 2 other federal investigators he hadn't met before. "Mr. Morrison, "Thank you for coming in," Agent Chen said, her expression more serious than it had been at the crime scene. "I want you to meet Agent Rodriguez from our Counterterrorism Division and Agent Williams from the NSA's Cybersecurity Unit." Jake felt a chill as he realized the scope of agencies now involved in the investigation. This has expanded beyond financial crimes, hasn't it? "Significantly," Agent Rodriguez confirmed. "The technology Ms. Sterling sold isn't just capable of compromising banking systems. Our analysis shows it could infiltrate critical infrastructure networks, power grids, water treatment facilities, hospital systems. The implications hit Jake like a physical blow. How many people could be affected?" "Potentially millions," Agent Williams replied grimly. "And we've discovered that Sterling Dynamics wasn't their only target. They've been running similar operations with at least 6 other technology companies across the country." Agent Chen leaned forward. "Mr. Morrison, we need your help. The operation we're planning to catch these people is extremely dangerous, and we need someone with your military background and Rex's detection capabilities." "What kind of help?" Jake asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. "We're setting up a controlled meeting between Victoria Sterling and her Russian contacts. She's going to tell them that the FBI raid was actually a false alarm, that she managed to convince the authorities it was a domestic dispute. She'll claim the money and equipment were moved to a secure location before the police arrived." Jake understood immediately why they needed him. "You want Rex and me to provide security detection at the meeting location." "More than that," Agent Rodriguez said. "We want you to pose as Sterling's new head of security, someone she hired after the close call with law enforcement. Your military background makes you credible, and Rex gives you a legitimate reason to be scanning for threats." The request was both flattering and terrifying. Jake would essentially be going undercover in an international espionage operation, with only his dog as backup. "What about Emma?" Jake asked. "My daughter stays with me on weekends. I can't put her at risk." "She'll be completely protected," Agent Chen assured him. "We'll have a full security detail on both of you, and the meeting is scheduled for Tuesday when she'll be at school." Jake looked around the conference room at the 3 federal agents who were asking him to risk his life to catch international criminals. And if something goes wrong? If these people figure out what's really happening? Then you and Victoria Sterling will probably both end up dead, Agent Williams said with brutal honesty. But if we don't stop them now, they'll disappear and continue selling weapons-grade cyber technology to hostile foreign governments. The choice was stark, but clear. Jake could walk away and return to his comfortable life, providing security for wealthy neighbors, or he could help prevent a potential national security catastrophe. "What exactly would I need to do?" Jake asked. Agent Chen pulled out a thick folder containing photographs, dossiers, and operational plans. "The meeting is set for Tuesday afternoon at a warehouse in Oakland. Victoria will arrive with what appears to be the same equipment and money from Saturday, but it will actually be decoys prepared by our technical team." "The Russians will be suspicious," Agent Rodriguez added. "They'll expect her to have enhanced security after the police incident. Your presence will actually make the scenario more believable." Jake studied the photographs of the 3 Russian operatives Victoria had identified. Dmitry Volkov looked like a middle-aged businessman, the kind of person who could blend into any corporate environment. Yuri Petrov appeared younger, with the intense focus of a technical specialist. But it was the 3rd photograph that made Jake's blood run cold. "This is the director?" Jake asked, pointing to an image of a woman with silver hair and cold, calculating eyes. "Katerina Kozlov," Agent Williams confirmed. "Former Russian military intelligence, now freelance. She's been linked to cyber attacks on NATO allies and has a reputation for eliminating anyone who becomes a liability." The stakes suddenly felt much more personal. Jake wasn't just helping catch financial criminals. He was going up against someone who killed people for a living. "She'll be at this meeting?" Jake asked. "Intelligence suggests yes. This operation is too important for her to delegate completely, which means if we can capture her, we can potentially dismantle their entire American network." Jake thought about Emma, about the world she would inherit if people like Katerina Kozlov succeeded in their plans. He thought about Rex, whose instincts had started this entire investigation, and about Victoria Sterling, who was risking her life to undo the damage she'd caused. "I'll do it," Jake said finally, "but I want detailed backup plans and exit strategies, and I want to personally approve the security arrangements for Emma." Agent Chen nodded. "Absolutely. We'll brief you on every aspect of the operation, and you'll have direct communication with our tactical teams throughout the meeting." As Jake left the FBI building that afternoon, he realized his life had taken a turn he never could have anticipated. A week ago, his biggest concern was whether Emma's soccer practice would conflict with his work schedule. Now he was preparing to go undercover against international terrorists. Rex seemed to sense his owner's tension during their evening walk, staying closer than usual and alert to every sound in their familiar neighborhood. Jake found himself studying the elegant Victorian houses with new eyes, wondering what other secrets might be hidden behind their pristine facades. That night, after Emma had fallen asleep, Jake sat in his living room cleaning his service pistol for the first time since leaving the military. The familiar routine was both comforting and sobering, a reminder that some problems couldn't be solved with negotiation or compromise. His phone buzzed with a text from Agent Chen. "Final briefing tomorrow at 0800. Thank you for doing this, Jake. The country owes you a debt." Jake stared at the message for a long moment before responding, "Just make sure we all come home alive." Tuesday afternoon arrived with unseasonable fog rolling in from San Francisco Bay, providing perfect cover for the FBI surveillance teams positioned around the Oakland warehouse district. Jake sat in the passenger seat of Victoria Sterling's new rental car, watching her hands tremble as she gripped the steering wheel. Rex lay calmly in the back seat, his training allowing him to remain composed despite the tension radiating from both humans. "Remember," Jake said quietly, touching his earpiece to ensure communication with the federal agents, "stick to the script. You hired me after Saturday's incident because you realized you needed better security. I'm here to scan for threats and make sure this meeting goes smoothly." Victoria nodded, her face pale beneath carefully applied makeup. "What if they don't believe us? What if they can tell something's wrong?" "Then we follow the emergency protocols Agent Chen briefed us on," Jake replied, checking his concealed weapon one final time. "But Victoria, these people chose you because you're not a trained operative. They'll expect you to be nervous after what happened." The warehouse they approached looked abandoned from the outside, its windows boarded and its loading docks sealed. But Jake's trained eye caught subtle signs of recent activity. Fresh tire tracks in the gravel, a security camera that didn't quite match the building's aged exterior, and the faint hum of generators powering equipment inside. "Target building confirmed," Jake spoke quietly into his microphone. "Arriving on schedule." Agent Chen's voice crackled through his earpiece. "Copy that. We have eyes on 3 vehicles already in position. Proceed as planned." Victoria parked where she'd been instructed, near a side entrance that would allow the FBI teams clear sight lines while maintaining the illusion of privacy. Jake stepped out first, Rex immediately at his side, both of them scanning for threats with professional efficiency. "Stay close to me," Jake told Victoria, as she emerged from the car with a briefcase containing the decoy materials. "Let me and Rex clear the entrance before you approach." The warehouse door opened as they approached, revealing Dmitry Volkov in an expensive suit that looked incongruous in the industrial setting. His eyes immediately focused on Jake and Rex with the calculating assessment of someone who understood the value of security measures. "Miss Sterling," Dmitry said with a slight Russian accent, "I see you've made some changes since our last meeting." "After Saturday's incident, I realized I needed professional protection," Victoria replied, her voice steady despite her fear. "This is Jake Morrison, former military specialist. He's here to ensure our transaction proceeds without interruption." Dmitry studied Jake with the intensity of a predator evaluating potential threats. "Mr. Morrison, I assume you understand the sensitive nature of this business relationship? I understand that my client values privacy and security. Jake replied neutrally. My job is to identify potential threats, not to ask questions about legitimate business activities. Rex had been scanning the entrance area, and Jake noticed the dog's subtle alert posture indicating the presence of weapons inside the building. Multiple weapons, based on the intensity of Rex's reaction. Your dog seems agitated, Dmitri observed. He's trained to detect threats, Jake explained. There are armed individuals inside this building. He's doing his job. A smile flickered across Dmitri's face. Indeed there are. We also value security, Mr. Morrison. Shall we proceed? The interior of the warehouse had been converted into a sophisticated command center with multiple computer stations, communication equipment, and what appeared to be a small armory of weapons. Jake counted at least 6 armed operatives positioned throughout the space, all of them watching him with professional wariness. But it was the woman seated at the central computer station who commanded Jake's immediate attention. Katerina Kozlov looked exactly like her FBI photograph, but her presence filled the room with an aura of controlled menace that no image could capture. Miss Sterling, Katerina said without turning from her screens, you've had an eventful week. Tell me about this police incident. Victoria launched into the rehearsed explanation about a domestic dispute with a neighbor, the police mistaking Rex's behavior for a simple noise complaint, and her decision to hire security afterward. Jake was impressed by her composure as she delivered the fictional account. And this equipment malfunction? Katerina asked, finally turning to face them. Her pale eyes seemed to dissect every word and gesture. A false alarm triggered by electromagnetic interference, Victoria replied, opening her briefcase to reveal the decoy communication devices prepared by the FBI technical team. Your equipment is quite sensitive. I've learned to handle it more carefully. Katerina gestured for Yuri Petrov to examine the devices. The younger Russian moved with the precise efficiency of a technical expert, connecting the equipment to diagnostic systems that would supposedly verify their authenticity. Jake remained alert, Rex at his side, both of them monitoring the room for signs of threat escalation. Through his earpiece, he could hear Agent Chen's team coordinating their positions around the building. The devices appear functional, Yuri reported after several tense minutes, but I'm detecting some unusual electromagnetic signatures that weren't present in our previous equipment. Jake felt his pulse spike. The FBI technical team had assured them that their decoys would pass casual inspection, but Yuri was clearly more sophisticated than expected. Perhaps damage from the police investigation? Victoria suggested, maintaining her cover story. Katerina stood slowly, her movement deliberate and threatening. Miss Sterling, in my experience, when American law enforcement becomes interested in a particular individual, they rarely lose that interest completely. The accusation hung in the air like a loaded weapon. Jake could see Victoria struggling to maintain her composure as Katerina's suspicion became explicit. I understand your concern, Victoria said carefully. But I've been conducting business as usual since Saturday. No follow-up contact, no additional surveillance that I've detected. Perhaps, Katerina said, circling around Victoria like a predator. But I'm curious about your new security consultant. Mr. Morrison, your background suggests you're overqualified for simple executive protection. Jake felt the weight of 6 weapons pointed in his direction as Katerina's operatives responded to her implied suspicion. Rex tensed beside him, reading the escalating threat level in the room. I specialize in corporate security for high-profile clients, Jake replied evenly. Miss Sterling's business requires discretion and professional-grade protection. Indeed, Katerina murmured. And your dog's training? Military working dog, explosive and narcotics detection? Standard security protocols for executives who might be targeted by competitors or hostile governments. Katerina's smile was razor-sharp. How fascinating that you mention hostile governments, Mr. Morrison. The situation was deteriorating rapidly. Jake could feel the operation teetering on the edge of collapse, with deadly consequences for everyone involved. Agent Chen, he whispered into his microphone, we may need immediate extraction. But Katerina had obviously been listening for exactly that kind of communication. "I think we've heard enough," she announced, pulling a pistol from her jacket. "Mr. Morrison, would you please remove your earpiece and place it on the table?" The cover was blown. Jake's mind raced through the emergency protocols as he slowly complied with Katerina's demand, placing his communication device where she could see it. "Miss Sterling," Katerina continued, "I'm disappointed. We offered you a lucrative partnership, and you've repaid us by cooperating with American law enforcement." "Please," Victoria said, her voice cracking under the pressure. "My daughter doesn't know anything about this. Don't hurt her." "Your daughter is currently under FBI protection," Katerina replied with cold satisfaction. "Did you really think we weren't monitoring your family's situation?" Jake realized that the Russians had been aware of the FBI operation from the beginning. They'd walked into a trap, not set one. "However," Katerina continued, "you've both served a useful purpose. Your cooperation has allowed us to identify the extent of American intelligence penetration into our operations." Rex suddenly exploded into action, his military training overriding everything else, as he detected the imminent threat to his handler. The German shepherd launched himself at the nearest armed operative, creating the distraction Jake needed to draw his weapon. "FBI, federal agents," Jake shouted, hoping his team was close enough to hear the warning. The warehouse erupted into chaos as automatic weapons fire filled the air. Jake grabbed Victoria and pulled her behind a concrete support pillar as bullets shattered computer screens and communications equipment around them. Through the gunfire, Jake could hear Agent Chen's voice through his discarded earpiece. "All units, immediate assault. Hostages in extreme danger." The next 60 seconds felt like hours as Jake used his military training to keep Victoria alive, while federal agents breached the warehouse from multiple entry points. Rex had disabled one operative and was engaging a second when the FBI tactical team's flashbang grenades filled the space with blinding light and deafening noise. When the smoke cleared, Jake found himself covered in concrete dust and blood, with Victoria Sterling unconscious beside him and Rex limping but alive. 4 of the Russian operatives were dead, 2 were wounded and in custody, and Katerina Kozlov was nowhere to be found. "Clear!" Agent Chen's voice cut through the ringing in Jake's ears. "Medics to the east wall immediately." As paramedics worked on Victoria's head injury and a veterinarian examined Rex's wounded leg, Agent Rodriguez approached Jake with a mixture of relief and frustration. "Kozlov escaped through a tunnel system we didn't know existed," he reported. "But we recovered enough computer equipment and documents to dismantle her entire American network." Jake nodded, too exhausted and traumatized to feel much satisfaction in their partial victory. What about Victoria's daughter? Safe and secure. The protection detail never wavered. 2 weeks later, Jake sat in Agent Chen's office, reviewing the aftermath of the warehouse operation. Victoria Sterling had recovered from her concussion and was cooperating fully with ongoing investigations. The cyber technology she'd sold had been traced and neutralized before it could be used against American infrastructure. "The intelligence we gathered has already prevented 3 other similar operations," Agent Chen reported, "and Victoria's testimony is helping us track down the remaining cells." "What happens to her now?" Jake asked. "Witness protection, most likely. Her cooperation has earned her some consideration, but she'll never be able to return to her previous life." Jake thought about Emma, who was blissfully unaware that her father had spent 2 weeks helping prevent a national security crisis. The normal rhythms of soccer practice and homework had never felt more precious. "And Kozlov?" Agent Chen's expression darkened. "Still at large. But she's lost her American operation and most of her resources. She's dangerous, but significantly weakened." Rex, his leg wrapped in bandages but his spirit intact, sat beside Jake's chair with the satisfied air of a soldier who had completed his mission. The dog's instincts had started an investigation that ultimately saved lives and protected national security. "Mr. Morrison," Agent Chen said, "the Bureau would like to offer you a formal position with our cyber terrorism task force. Your military background and Rex's abilities would be valuable assets. Jake considered the offer, thinking about the adrenaline and purpose he'd felt during the operation, balanced against his responsibility to provide Emma with a stable, peaceful childhood. "I'm honored," Jake replied. "But I think my daughter needs a father who comes home every night, not one who disappears on classified operations." Agent Chen nodded with understanding. "The offer stands if you ever change your mind. And Mr. Morrison, thank you. What started with your dog barking at a car trunk helped prevent what could have been a catastrophic attack on American infrastructure." 6 months later, Jake received a postcard from Switzerland with no return address. The message was brief. "My daughter is safe and starting college next year. Thank you for helping me find the courage to do the right thing." Victoria Jake showed the postcard to Rex, who sniffed it once and returned to his afternoon nap in the sunny spot by the living room window. For the dog, the entire experience had been just another day's work, another threat detected and neutralized. But Jake knew that the world was full of hidden dangers that most people never suspected, and that sometimes the difference between security and catastrophe came down to a dog's instincts and an ordinary person's willingness to pay attention when something seemed wrong. As Emma called from the kitchen that dinner was ready, Jake reflected on how much his perspective had changed since that foggy morning when Rex had refused to walk past Victoria Sterling's car. The comfortable routine of suburban fatherhood felt like a privilege now, one that he would never take for granted again. The neighborhood looked the same. The elegant Victorian houses still projected wealth and respectability, but Jake now understood that behind any door could be secrets that threatened everything he held dear. The price of freedom, he'd learned, was not just eternal vigilance, but the willingness to act when vigilance revealed the truth. Rex's single bark in the morning had ultimately saved millions of people from a cyber attack they would never know had been prevented. Sometimes the most important victories were the ones that no one ever heard about, and the real heroes were the dogs who trusted their instincts and the people who trusted their dogs. 1 year later, Jake stood in the backyard of their new house, watching Emma play fetch with Rex while barbecuing dinner for their small family. The German Shepherd's limp was barely noticeable now, and his enthusiasm for simple games had returned completely. Jake had used part of the FBI's substantial reward payment to buy a house with a proper yard, something both Emma and Rex deserved after everything they'd been through. "Dad," Emma called out, running over with Rex at her side, "Mrs. Peterson next door wants to know if Rex is available for security consulting. She says someone's been going through her garbage, and she thinks Rex could catch them." Jake laughed, imagining their elderly neighbor trying to hire a former military working dog to investigate petty neighborhood crimes. "Tell Mrs. Peterson that Rex is officially retired from active duty, but we'd be happy to keep an eye on her property during our evening walks." The doorbell rang, interrupting their conversation. Jake wasn't expecting anyone, and his security instincts, heightened by the events of the previous year, made him cautious about unexpected visitors. Rex's ears perked up, but his relaxed body language indicated no threat. Through the front window, Jake saw Agent Chen standing on his porch, holding what appeared to be a gift basket. He opened the door with curiosity, noting that she was dressed casually rather than in her usual federal agent attire. "Agent Chen, this is a surprise. Is everything all right?" "Everything's fine," she assured him with a genuine smile. "I was in the neighborhood and wanted to deliver this personally. It's from the director of the FBI, along with his personal thanks for your service to the country." Jake accepted the basket, which contained gourmet dog treats, a new tactical collar for Rex, and an engraved plaque reading, "Rex Morrison, Hero Dog, Defender of National Security." "The director wanted you to know that the intelligence gathered from the Sterling operation has led to the disruption of 17 similar networks across North America and Europe," Agent Chen continued. "Rex's initial alert prevented what our analysts estimate could have been the largest cyber attack in American history." Emma appeared beside Jake, her eyes wide with interest. "Is Rex really a hero dog?" Agent Chen knelt down to Emma's level. Your dog saved more lives than any other working dog in FBI history. He's definitely a hero." Jake watched his daughter's face light up with pride as she hugged Rex, who accepted the attention with his usual dignified patience. The dog had no understanding of international espionage or national security, but he clearly enjoyed being the center of positive attention. "There's one more thing," Agent Chen said, standing up and addressing Jake directly. "Katerina Kozlov was captured last month in Prague. Czech authorities worked with our international task force to track her down using intelligence from the Sterling case. She's being extradited to the United States to face trial for her crimes." Jake felt a weight lift from his shoulders that he hadn't realized he'd been carrying. Knowing that Kozlov was still at large had created a constant background tension in his life, a fear that she might eventually seek revenge against the people who had destroyed her operation. What about Victoria Sterling? How is she adjusting to witness protection? "Better than expected," Agent Chen replied. "She's been relocated to a small college town in Vermont, where she's teaching business ethics at the local university. Her daughter is thriving in her new environment, and Victoria says she feels like she's finally living an authentic life." Jake was glad to hear that Victoria had found some measure of peace after the chaos her choices had created. Her willingness to cooperate with the investigation had been crucial to dismantling the broader conspiracy, despite the personal cost. "Agent Chen," Emma said with the directness of childhood, "do you want to stay for dinner? Dad's making hamburgers, and Rex always gets one too." Agent Chen looked surprised by the invitation, then pleased. "I'd like that very much, Emma. It's been a long time since I've had a home-cooked meal." As they sat around Jake's patio table an hour later, sharing stories and watching Rex patrol the yard with mock seriousness, Jake reflected on how much his life had changed since that foggy morning when everything started. Emma chatted easily with Agent Chen about school and soccer, while Rex dozed contentedly at Jake's feet. "You know," Agent Chen said during a lull in the conversation, "I've been thinking about what you said when you declined our job offer, about Emma needing a father who comes home every night." "Any regrets?" Jake asked. "None whatsoever. But it made me realize that I've been so focused on protecting the country that I forgot to build a life worth protecting. I've decided to request a transfer to a position with more regular hours." Jake nodded with understanding. Work-life balance isn't just a corporate buzzword, it's about being present for the people who matter most. As the evening wound down and Agent Chen prepared to leave, she thanked Jake and Emma for their hospitality. At the front door, she paused to scratch Rex behind the ears. "Keep taking care of your family, Rex," she murmured to the dog. "You've done more than enough saving the world for one lifetime." After Agent Chen left, Jake helped Emma get ready for bed, while Rex settled into his usual spot on the living room rug. As he tucked his daughter in, Emma asked the question that had obviously been on her mind all evening. "Dad, were you really in danger when you helped catch those bad people?" Jake considered how much truth an 8-year-old could handle. "There was some danger, sweetheart, but Rex and I had lots of help from very good people who made sure we stayed safe." "Are you going to do it again?" "No," Jake said firmly. "My job now is being your dad and taking care of Rex. That's the most important work anyone could do." Emma smiled sleepily. "I'm proud of you and Rex for helping people, but I'm glad you're staying home now." As Jake turned off Emma's light and headed downstairs, he found Rex waiting for him with the patient devotion that had defined their relationship since the day they'd met. The dog's simple loyalty had saved countless lives and changed the course of history, yet Rex remained focused on the small daily acts of love and protection that mattered most. "Come on, boy," Jake said, opening the back door for their final walk of the evening. "Let's check the perimeter and then get some rest." As they walked through their quiet neighborhood, Jake noticed the same elegant houses and manicured lawns that had surrounded them a year ago. But now he understood that behind any facade could hide secrets that threatened everything good in the world. The difference was that he also knew there were people and animals dedicated to protecting what mattered most. Rex's tail wagged as they completed their security patrol and headed home, satisfied that all was well in their small corner of the world. Tomorrow would bring new adventures and simple pleasures, but tonight they were content knowing that sometimes the most heroic thing you could do was pay attention when something seemed wrong and have the courage to act on what you discovered.